Welcome to Creators Corner, a Charlevoix Circle of Arts YouTube series where we highlight a new Michigan-based artist every second Monday of the month. Hello, I am Ebony Amber, your host of Creators Corner here at the Charlevoix Circle of Arts Gallery. And today our very special guest is Kim Richelle. Thank you so much for doing this with us.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here.
And we're thrilled because Kim and I actually go way back. She officiated my wedding and is a very good friend to my husband. So I sort of inherited you from that relationship, and I'm so grateful for it.
Oh, we have our own thing.
Yes, that's right. Yes, we got our own thing going on. And speaking of having something going on, Kim has had a solo exhibit here at the Circle in 2021 entitled Dream to Reality, where she presented topics such as symbolism and consciousness. She has also had book signing events here, and she currently has work available in the gallery store, and she's a regular participant in the Charlevoix Holiday Market. So very cool. Can you tell us more about the Dream to Reality show?
It's I loved it because they said it was the body of my work. So I'm like, I'm not dead yet.
A long way to go.
It's the body of my work to this point. Mm-hmm. But it was a wonderful experience to do the show and to be able to be as honest as I can be, and have always felt slightly inhibited in my beautiful little town, right, growing up here. But the Dream to Reality itself was literally about the symbology of the human history, like how and why do we want to create at all? How and why do we dream? You know, why do we then, in modern times, try to strip the magic away from our lives?
So what specific topics did you cover?
I used the symbols of the elements and that are in the tarot and in our dream interpretation and in my fairy tales themselves. The characters of my fairy tales can be based in each element, as the zodiac signs as well, and then that layers upon layers upon layers upon itself. So at one point the show had the journey of the fool in first person. That was one of my presentations where I ended up doing a reading at the end that was collective for all present that worked, which was startling to me.
How did it work?
It actually answered the group's concerns. And then afterwards we did a little bit of discussion, obviously, where I was blown away about how much each individual took from it. And to me that is about the collective unconscious. So you're thinking that you're saying something, and I deliberately keep the symbolism as clean as possible and try to put enough humor and lightheartedness into it so that people aren't frightened by this, because it is startling when you realize that it is shared. As simple as a triangle, the symbology of fire, and that's a wonderful thing. Can I say that about the six-pointed star that we're all very familiar with, consists of two triangles that are representing all four elements. So I weave that into a lot of my art, and I recognize it in a lot of other people's art, or even in their reaction to mine.
So Dreams to Reality was a combination of your work being presented and then you doing presentations on sort of some of the aspects of your art.
Right.
And sort of engaging people in real time in those symbols and just creating a really unique consciousness connecting environment.
Right.
That sounds very cool. So what kind of pieces were being shown in that?
So I've been pretty much obsessed with I'd written 9 fairy tales. There are 3 trilogies. They're in verse. They're very symbolic, very careful. Like I was, a very good friend finally confronted me and said that nobody's going to know what you're really talking about. And I had to admit that that was by design, that only if you were pretty well versed in what I was saying would you even know what I was saying, and that would avoid some challenges that I was at the time trying to avoid and am no longer, because I did get called out. And what my friend said is if anyone meets you, sees your art, reads your little happy little fairy tales, they're never going to know that it was hard, and you won't help anyone.
Wow. What are friends for, huh?
Yeah,
but to tell us the truth.
Kick you in the butt once in a while.
Yeah.
That same friend that we were talking about earlier.
Wow. So tell us the names of the books that you have completed and are available for people to check out.
The only one that truly existed in the form that I want it to is Banshee. And it's the 5th book in the series. I consider them inspired works, or I'm insane. Or a combination of both, because I definitely get input. I definitely get direction. My friend Annie Russell calls it divine interference. But yes, it's like definitely I can't fully take credit for all the works that they are. So the one that exists is the 5th book, so it's in the 2nd trilogy, and it's Banshee, and it's a book about misogyny. That was the secret layer that had to be revealed in the story behind the story. This year, if I can get it together, because there have been a lot of fun things that have interfered with my work, I hope to release the second. So the Day Rue Flew is available just in its pure fairy tale form, fully illustrated. It is
beautiful, beautiful book.
Thank you.
They both are. But.
Thank you. So it has existed for 23 years, almost exactly. It was launched on October 13th. It happened to be a Friday, and a full moon in 2000.
Perfect. You got all that energy.
At Kuski's Gallery. Chuck Kuski was wonderful. Both Chuck and Nancy have always been super supportive of me from the time, honestly, I met them when I was a child. And Todd Warner and artists like that in town. Bill Murray. Bill and Todd have both passed recently, and so it's been a toll on my heart. But the Kuskis that I met through Todd and through Bill have always encouraged me in those ways. Like some of my, like I do mermaids and fairies, and so sometimes in a very conservative area and upbringing that is questioned, how they're clothed or unclothed, or even characters like Puck is one of my main characters, whether he's, what is he? Is he demonic in some way? Or, like, people haven't read the old tales, so for them their fear takes over their interpretation of what I'm doing.
Yeah, and what do you think opened your mind in a society that might have been questioning of those things? How did you get the gumption to dive right in? And
this goes directly to my friend Stephen that we were talking about, who knew what made me dive in. And I have trauma from my childhood, early childhood. A therapist told me maybe I was 16 months old when I suffered the first trauma. And I believe that everyone is born with sight, clairvoyance, clear vision, or any of the clairs, being able to hear or see or touch. But mine had to remain open, very available to me, because it was actually my survival. And I think that is why. And then learning that I couldn't openly speak of it for years, but it kept me, the clear vision would allow me to see other people's fear and recognize that if they were attacking, it wasn't anything that I was doing or not doing except challenging them out of their complacency.
And so what do you think it is about that eye being open, for lack of a better way to describe it, that connects one to fairy tales?
I think that's a very good way to describe it.
Yeah.
So what we think of as fairies are associated with the East and with air, with the wind, with intellect. They're the sylphs of Tinkerbells or sylphs, or sylphs or Tinkerbells. And so we think that's the entirety of fairy, right? But that is only the Eastern realm, the rising sun, the intellect of that. So there are times if you hear something in the wind and you're interpreting it intellectually, that is a faerie experience, but of a specific sort. If it's the north, it's the more practical, sensory, the five senses, like the pentacles and the tarots. You know, it keeps kind of going back on itself as the diamonds in the poker deck. And they represent earth and practical sensory of this incarnation kind of experiences. And that is as faerie as the sylph in the true lore. So it is when you have just a physical sensation in reaction to something, to the earth itself, to a tree. That is a northern experience, earth experience, but just as faerie as anything else, and all the elements have the same. Growing up on Lake Michigan, so the undines of the West, ours is, much of this is based in like Celtic, Nordic things, so the water was in the West, and I think it's fortunate that I got to grow up in a place where the Lake Michigan served the purpose of the ocean.
Yeah, and speaking of growing up in northern Michigan, was it Charlevoix specific? You grew up right here.
Right.
And so you have history with the Circle of Arts building.
Yes.
And so what is your experience with this building even before it became the gallery?
It was, I am the oldest, the only daughter of 4, and my brothers are all these brilliant, fabulous men, and they are, but we were all a bunch of nerds as kids, and this was our library, this was our public library, this building, and my memories here, we were here a lot. I reveal that our favorite things were going to bookstores or going to this library. And bookstores were harder to get to at the time. We'd have to go to Traverse City or some long journey to get there. But we grew up in Norwood, which is about 10 miles south of Charlevoix proper. So the folks would just drop us off. And we would be entertained and thrilled to be here for hours.
That's amazing. So what was it like for you when the library turned over to the gallery, and then the library got such a beautiful home, and that must have been quite an experience for you?
Because the where the library is now, besides being just absolutely beautiful, is my middle school. It's where I attended middle school. It's where I met Stephen, as we talk about, who's such an influence and muse in my work. And it wasn't pretty back then, you know. It was
looked like that when
old
you went to
middle school, and it was pretty rugged and not always great memories associated with it. So it's just been revitalized, and it has returned to what it should have always been.
Good energy in there.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
The good energy. Stephen himself took me, he was studying architecture at the time, and when it was in a state where it was, I shouldn't probably say this, but it was like taped off.
Tell us, give us the tea.
It was taped off. He'd been in. He knew the beautiful tile work that was in there. He knew the choices they'd made, and he had to show me. So he came home for a visit, took me up there, put a hard hat on me, because I get timid, and I'm a good girl. I want to behave and follow the rules. And because I'm so rebellious internally, I have to be sort of behaving myself. And he said, just act like you belong here. Walks right in, so I'm scampering along behind him and got to see it the first time. What was our gymnasium and it had a little stage there, became the beautiful central library. But the other things that they offer are wonderful. So when this converted then into the Circle of Arts, it was actually a friend of ours, the person that purchased the building and allowed this to bloom. That was exciting in itself too. Yeah.
And how old were you when you had that adventure in what was to be the library with the hard hat and everything?
I think we must have been in our 30s.
Wow. Very cool.
I don't know what year it was built, but I know we were quite, maybe it was we were in our 40s, but it was
but a cool experience nonetheless to go back to that part of your life, you know, and watch the transition that way. It's very cool. Can you tell us a little bit about Vain Attempt? Because I think that kind of circles through that stuff.
So it was, I was asked to make a piece for the opening of the Circle of Arts 15 years ago, right? Is it that long ago? I think so. And I think so. I think it was 2008.
Okay.
And I was approached, and I made this piece painted on a door, and to me there's all these extra things, like it's a portal. A door always represents a portal to me, and the channel, so I made it of the lighthouse and the channel, added a mermaid, the moon and the stars and the sun and all the things that I would typically do, brilliant colors, which are sort of thematic of everything that I do. And it was in answer, and kind of almost sarcastically, to my high school principal, Zane Smith. And I did call him before.
You got permission?
Yeah, at least to warn him.
Yeah.
I don't know if he ever actually gave me permission. But so different ones who haven't understood think that the VANE is a misspelling of vain attempt. But it is truly for the man, because he couldn't understand what I was doing artistically or even in my writing when I was a child, and urged me to do like some sensible pen and inks of the lighthouse, as most every artist was doing at the time, and still. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful symbol of our town, but I was resistant to do that.
That's your rebellious part that you're saying you have to keep under control, right?
Exactly.
But we're glad you don't always keep it under control, for sure.
So that was my first piece that I did for this show, for this building. And it was a great opening. Everybody was involved, and there was so much color and fun.
Yeah, I bet. Earlier you mentioned the tarot deck.
Yes.
I know you have some pieces that you've created. Are you trying to work through each card and create your very own tarot deck? And if so, how far along are you with that?
So The Journey of the Fool in First Person is a book. And in it, the Fool is first person me, and she goes through these different stages of reality. I mean, we can get into that a little bit more, but it's a little warped. It's a little folded back on itself. So in order to meet the requirements of the book after I wrote it, I did every card of the major arcana, which is the separation of the deck. Their arcana just means like the mysteries, the secrets, and these are the big secrets. And the minor arcana is basically a poker deck with a lot more fun to it, a lot more interesting drawings, but it's existed since the 1400s in Italy, and I'm gradually chipping away at those. I've got the 22 finished, but I want to complete a deck and have it available when the book's available.
Oh, that would be so cool. I really look forward to that. And speaking of your creativity and being sort of born with your eyes open and all of these things, I just wonder, have you just always been creative? And if so, how long did it take you to come up with the particular style that you have? Because your work is very stylized. It's very much you. Anybody can see it and go, oh, that's Kim. That's for sure Kim. So did that just evolve naturally for you, or did you have to work at it?
It became very natural to me, and I am 62 now and went through the whole school system here, and there are people, friends of mine, that have reminded me that I used to draw a single picture for everybody in the class when I was like in the third grade or something. Like I would come up with funny, I love faces, clearly. I put faces on my moons and my sunshines, but I love characters, even human or not, fairy or not, that show that. So I think the trauma was experienced through my mother. I mean, she had some serious mental illness, so I was always a little afraid of her. And I remember her yelling for me when I was 3 to come to where she was. And she had this beautiful vanilla, I think it was leather, little folder that I had drawn on.
That
like
rebellion, there's that
ballpoint pen, like when I was 3 years old. And she is an intense person, and she was saying, Kimmy, it's Felix the cat. And I didn't know what the problem was. I knew I had probably destroyed a piece of her property, but I didn't know what she was so intense about. And it was because she could fully recognize that it was Felix the cat. And she kept...
And you were 3. And
I was 3, and she was like, so worked up. And she said, he has his bag of tricks. And I thought, this is bad. I don't know. Is this bad? And it was very much influenced by Disney and by Felix the Cat and by early animated things that we saw on Saturday mornings when I was a kid. And but I was sneaky about it, where I would put in deeper meanings into these, otherwise not at 3, but soon after. When I realized that got me out of trouble in itself. The ability to draw that kept me from being in trouble.
Because she was more distracted by the fact that you.
She was tickled.
Okay.
She was kind of amazed, and she
should be
tickled that, but she comes off so like I thought I was in trouble. And I remember being in the 2nd grade in the middle school playground over there. That is now another kind of playground that's beautiful. But I remember overhearing. Everyone dressed very typically in the 60s back then. It wasn't a dress code, but there were a lot of little plaid skirts and penny loafers and not me. You're right? So I was always, and that was a freedom that was allowed by my mother, encouraged by my mother. Like I was very funky little hippie girl. And I overheard 2 of my most popular, well-behaved friends saying, "It's okay for Kimmy. Because she's an artist." Like others were in trouble. Others were in trouble for being different. And I was allowed to be different because I was an artist. So I learned those things and learned how to be bratty within.
So it's almost like everybody around you was just naturally convinced that you were an artist. You didn't have to like make a whole statement or presentation. It was just oozing out of your personality and who you were.
Yes, and I would make big turns. Like they were calling me the dragon girl because I drew so many dragons for a period of time that I quit drawing dragons. You know? And then
once they label me, I'm done.
Exactly. And then I would just try to weasel out of certain things, but then I'd miss them and I'd have to incorporate them back in.
Yeah. Yeah, and, you know, as I've mentioned, you have such a unique style, but has anybody influenced that style over the years? Or
one of my, Brian Froud, who did Labyrinth, he's actually, his wife is from the East Jordan area, her family. I got to meet him one time. That was, and this was only maybe 10 years ago or something, but it just gives me goosebumps thinking about the meeting because it was at Murray's, when Murray's was there, who happened to be the daughter of my art teacher, of Bill Murray, that I mentioned earlier. So like there's always this weave. I think that's part of why I love to sneak in symbolism, is because I grew up in such a community where there were naturally interwoven relationships and ideas. So yeah, that was amazing. He's a huge influence on me. I love the work of Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman and those where it is all of them are actually pushing the boundaries of reality.
For sure. So which project are you working on next that you're hoping to get done and complete and allow the world to enjoy?
So when I said how they're sort of out of order, the 6 books, I'm in the 9 books. I have the Journey of the Fool is always going to be a process that I'm going to weave through. But the 2 that I'm working on now are The Day Rue Flew, Book 2, with the story behind the story added and some of the other material, and Faerie Phobia.
Okay.
Faerie Phobia is very dear to my heart. It's all fully written. I have to do the illustrations. And I have sort of put off to doing illustrations. And to be very honest, one of my challenges is that we live in such a white world, you know, where this will involve many fairies of all their forms, like we've talked about, because they actually are protesting humans. So they gather together to protest humans because humans' belief system creates their reality. It's got a bit of a Tinkerbell, clap if you believe kind of thing to it, but it's darker, obviously, and it, of course, is really talking about homophobia and other kinds of bigotry. So I want to do a wonderful job. I've gotten myself cornered into it. I want to include fairies of other colors, and there's a joke in the fairy tale itself, the verse part. There's 2 sections to all the books where, they judge me by the shape of my eyes, and it's one called Star with star-shaped eyes. Judge me by the color of my skin, and it's ultraviolet. It's a character that I have that's purple. So it's, I've touched it, but my work being all based in, mostly in Celtic fairy tales and Celtic lore, and being blonde, raising my redheaded children in a very narrow scope here as far as diversity of my whole life, that I don't want to be artificial with it. I don't want to throw like Token in South Park or right. I want it to be real. It's a challenge. I haven't quite worked it out yet, so I haven't done the illustrations yet.
Well, I look forward to that. So you've got this new book that we're hoping that will come out soon, and you're still working on individual pieces throughout that you're...
Yes, yeah. And what's happened is because the illustrations have taken over so much of my time, and many of them are available in prints, so that I can continue to put the detail into them that I want to, rather than the original works.
That's smart. And am I right in saying that you hand write all of your books? I mean, it's not like a font that you choose. This is all, you're sitting there writing it out.
And that's part of the illusion that I'm trying to create, of it being almost like an old manuscript. So, and then those questions have come up in the process of publishing, where the fairy tales themselves, the fully illustrated pages, are my own hand writing the words. Then we came up with a font based on my handwriting for the, many words of the story behind the story. So that's... so
it's the Kim Richelle font. Okay.
Yes.
I like it.
Yes. And the picture of myself, like the author picture, we were going to put a photo in, and I'm like, we cannot. Like the whole thing, so it's all going to be self-portraits, and different self-portraits at different stages. So like in Banshee, the self-portrait, Banshee character is this winged, like of the lore, but she sings the souls to the other side, is the character Rue, is the main character of all the books. The little monarch butterfly fairy thinks of her as this beautiful, wonderful thing, and Banshee herself has terrible self-esteem, where she thinks she's this horrible, she hides in the dark, she's afraid of casting her shadow, she has all of those, but under all her cloaks are my rose-breasted cockatoo. In a lot of ways, I have a cockatoo. My pet RuPaul is a
seen pictures.
Is a gala, so he's next to me always when I'm drawing, so he ended up being Banshee, and my friend Carla Blacker is the face and body of Banshee, but the wings and the pink and silver of him is incorporated.
And of course, the symbolism of birds and everything has its own whole system of, what that means to people and everything. And
like the sirens and the feminine that has been bashed, which is partly what I am doing in the story behind the story with the misogyny. Like, misogyny is inherent in patriarchy, and that is, I think, and this is, I don't know, we can edit this out if I go too far, but I think it's people's reaction to the trans woman. I think when somebody is screaming, define a woman, they are missing the whole mysterious, fabulous yin of what a woman is by getting so hung up on the gender of it. So that's a lot of what I was trying to confront with Banshee, because the idea of Banshee, she belonged to the families of Ireland, and she would call out in the night to prophesize the death of someone who was in the family. And our hang-ups about females and death have made that an extremely negative thing, where the Irish celebrate with their wakes the transformation. They believe so strongly in the soul carrying on and the goodness of them going on to a higher place, into a heaven, that they aren't as hung up about death as us. So Rue saying, I am singing you to the other side. So the symbolism of the bird feet of the sirens and like the owl's call being so scary, is our prejudice, our
Mm.
society's prejudice, our patriarchy's prejudice.
Wow. Well, I look forward to all of this. And I mean, you're just a busy, busy bee. You have a lot going on, but I am there every step of the way. You really bring magic to the world, especially to Charlevoix. We all love you.
Yeah.
And thank you so much once again for doing this with me. And if anybody has more questions for Kim or wants to check out her work, I will have her information down below. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks again for watching Charlevoix Circle of Arts Creators Corner. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel and hit the bell down below to be notified of our next video premiere. These are 2 easy ways to show Michigan artists just how much we appreciate their contribution to our beautiful state.